Hey everyone, so today we're gonna look at Google Sheets and how to build an API from Google Sheets. So we're gonna use the Pokemon dataset to make it a bit more fun, and we're gonna see how we can take a bunch of data in a spreadsheet and make it into a working API. And I'll go through that whole process with you, and we'll see where we get to basically. So this is the data that we have, and we're going to turn it into a JSON API. So a JSON API example, let me show you. This is what a JSON API looks like. So you get a bunch of data, and it's in a format that other softwares can interact with. So that's what a JSON API is, and I think there is some endpoint. So let's try this out. So here, if we go to this is the JSON endpoint. So very easy to understand. You can clearly see it, and this then gets used by the software or the website or whatever application that you're building to generate user interfaces or do some stuff based on this information. So what I'm gonna show you today is how to take this data from a spreadsheet. So you might be in a project that you don't want to spin up a database, you don't want to add overhead to your thing. It might be a internal system where people are updating a spreadsheet and they're not really updating a system, and you don't have a user interface for it, and your whole user interface is this spreadsheet basically. There's a way to take this data out and then display it somewhere. So you might want to build like a dashboard, or you might want to build some sort of thing on top of your spreadsheet that gives your users some sort of live access data access, rather than you manually entering stuff into it. So this is thing. So one caveat is, don't use this for like large scale systems. So like, I know COVID Excel sheet, like the UK government this funny thing where they ran the whole COVID test program on a Excel sheet, and then they were using that Excel sheet to update all of the stats in it, and it failed massively. So don't use it for large scale systems. Internal systems, hobby projects, all of that stuff is fine. I think, in my opinion, it just keeps everything lean. Costs are zero basically, and you can hit the API as much as possible. You don't have to worry about bandwidth and so on. So the way I figured out how to do this, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Obviously you can take this data, build a layer that takes this data and transforms it, so on. But the way I've found easiest is to continue using the Google products that are free basically. So this is a free account that I have, and what we'll do is we'll use Google Scripts to build this. So if you right click, or if you go to new, more, then app script, you'll be presented with something like this. So you can give it a name, Pokemon API. So you can give it a name, and what you want to do is this allows you to run basically JavaScript. I think most of it is JavaScript, but Google has some features that are like specific to Google, but it's basically JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, you can write Google App scripts pretty simply. So what I'll do is I'll go through how to use this, and how it all works basically. So the way to, so if you want to create like a get method, my function isn't going to work, so you're going to have to use a function like this called do get, and this tells the script that when it hits with the get method, this is what I want you to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to just take this, we're gonna call, once the API is called, we're gonna get the spreadsheet and then loop through the rows, put all the rows into a JSON, return and respond with a JSON object. So this is what we're going to do when we're doing this project. So I'll put that up here, so we can just take them all off one by one. So what we'll do is we'll first try and just return some empty string, a normal string, so like hello world, something like that. So if we save this, then do a new deployment, want to do a web app, and access using myself, and we want to choose anyone. So with anyone, it allows anyone on the internet to access it. Otherwise, what will happen is only certain people will be able to allow access. So we'll click deploy, and what that will give us is it will give us an endpoint. Just give it a second. The first time it's a bit, it takes a few seconds to deploy, but after that it should be very quick. So it's given us a web app, so we click here, and the endpoint type isn't supported. So what we'll do is we'll change this endpoint type to something that is supported. So if we change this to and call it status and success. Okay, cool. So and then what we wanna do is just return that result as a thing. So this is getting the content store, creating a text output and result, and we're setting the map type to JSON. So we need to deploy that again. Click on the deploy. We click that and we get a status success. So this is basically an API already. So to make this a bit more useful, we want to include basically the data from the spreadsheet. So what we can do is we can then call the spreadsheet. So what this piece of code is doing is getting the spreadsheet, using the spreadsheet app, opening a URL. So in this example, what we'll do is we'll just get this specific URL rather than allowing anyone to pass a URL. So we get the spreadsheet, and then to get the rows, what we want to do is do let rows equals spreadsheet. Okay, sorry, we need to get the sheet first. So let's get the sheet. actually you can make this const because we're not going to change them. So we get the sheet with the list of Pokemons, and we do and we just do spreadsheet dot get sheet by name, and the name of the sheet is also called Pokemon, so we can copy that. Then now we've got the sheet, and then we want to get the rows, so we do var rows equals sheet dot get range. Then we want to start with the second line, because the second line is this one here, and then we want to start from the first column. So you see here there's an example of turn the number of rows, get sheet 0, get sheet 0, range 1, 2, and 3. So we don't want to return 3, we want to return everything basically. So we want to return so to do this we'll do a sheet dot get last row, then we want to -1, and the column we want to do sheet dot get last column, and that should be it. And we want to get the display values. So here is we got the rows. So let's see what happens when we display this. Probably not going to be useful. So we want to actually, it might be better to use a test URL. So use a test URL thing, and I think we need to click save. So click save. Authorization required to perform the action. So I think there is project settings. Oh, okay, yeah, there are. So let me just try to do a deployment. I think what's happening is, because this is a new account, okay, we need to authorize access for this continuation here. Okay, so now we need to add the access to the spreadsheet. So now that's done, it should be fine. So if we go to test deployment and we click on it, it should just work. Yeah, it does work. And if we now just check rows, it'll be all the different rows. So you can see already we have all the data that we want here. So yeah, I'm not going to edit any of this out. I'm going to leave everything that I go through. So if you fall into these errors, you know what to do basically. So the issue here was that we were getting an error because we didn't have permission to access this spreadsheet essentially. So as you might have noticed, let's get the test deployment URL. We could just test it quickly. So it starts at the second row because we set it to start at the second row. What might be useful is if we get it from the first row, and then we have the first row as well. So we have the title of everything. It might be useful to change this to ID. So if we change this to ID, You see, it's updated to ID now. So now that we have all of this, we can use the first row as like our reference for the property names, and the second row, from the second row we could just do the loop. Yes, so now what we want to do, we want to loop through. So let this be a constant for, we want to do let what do we want to do? So this can be a constant as well. So we want to do let Pokemon list. Pokemon list equals a empty array, and here we can do data, and the data will be Pokemon list. So if we save that, look at our test thing, it should just be an empty list now. Yep, cool. So now that we have an empty list, what we want to do is we want to go through and loop through each of the rows and add them to the array, because at the moment, if we empty this out, at the moment each of the rows is in a object. So we need to basically map this with this, map this with this, and it just needs to go through like that. So what we'll do is we'll create a loop. So we'll create a for loop. So and we just do let I equals 1, because we don't want to start on the first row. We want to start on the second row. And we'll do I equals 1, and then rows dot length. Sorry, not rows dot length. I is less than rows dot length, and then we just do I is plus plus. Just a simple loop. Not sure why there's errors. This might tell us. Remove declaration of. Oh, it's unused. Okay, cool. So then we want to get the first Pokemon. So the rows. Then we just type in I. So that will give us a Pokemon, and then what we want to do is how do we want to do this? So we want to loop through each array. So each one of these, and map to each one of these. So now we've got the row. So we're at this row. We want to get row 0, and then we want to go from there. So I'll create a const up here called properties, and then we put rows and row 0 as properties. So now that we have Pokemon, we want to go through each of the array elements and just map it to the other one, and this should be quite simple. So here we go. And so what we'll do is const for. We create another for loop within the for loop. So and we use let x equals 0, and x is less than. Sorry, let me just see what this error is. not sure what this error is. Oh, this is what the error is. X is thing less than properties dot length and the x plus plus. So this is going to loop through all of the different properties and map all the properties to the thing. So what we want to do is we'll maybe call it call this row, and call this Pokemon, and we put Pokemon as a object. So what we then do is do Pokemon, and we put in properties and then the x value, which will give, for example, 0 would give that, 1 would give this, and then what we'll do is we do row then x as well, and that should give us a full Pokemon, all the values for the Pokemon mapped to each other. What we'll then do is right at the end of this, we'll push this into the Pokemon list. So if we go to Pokemon list, then we do push Pokemon, and this should, in theory, just add all of the Pokemon. So we save this, and if we now check, you'll see that each Pokemon is now in a array object. You can add other things as well. So for example, you can add functions here and just clean up things as well. Okay, so look, Pokemon list, so we can just make everything a bit more nicer here. So take all of this, put that in here, and in here we just do get Pokemon list, and we just pass in this function, and now it's all a bit tidied up, and you'll see we're not returning anything. So if I return Pokemon list here, you see that the list still comes back. We can do other things like also passing parameters. So to pass in a parameter, so for example, an ID, we can use something like this. So we can pass in, we can use Pokemon ID equals e.parameter, and then then you get the parameter name. So for example, right here is ID, we can just use that and then pass that into Pokemon, and in Pokemon we can just set that as null thing. So what we can do additionally is if ID is set and ID does not exist in this thing, we can just we can filter it all out. There might be a better way to do this using the spreadsheet API, but the way using this logic, what you might do is in here and just say if row 0, which is the ID column, so let's do if ID and ID row 0 does not equal to ID, then we just want to continue. We don't want to add anything in. So if we save that, and let's say where is it? Test deployment. We copy the URL, and what we'll have to do is just pass in ID equals 1, and it should, ID is not defined, sorry, Pokemon, so ID, so here it should just return the first one. And you can change this to whatever. So if we get the URL again and just do ID equals 300 or something, it will give us the Pokemon that is on 300. Or let's say we want to do we only want to get legendary, so we will probably add in legendary. So add in legendary and do legendary, and then we'll pass in legendary here, and we do the same thing, set as now, and let's say legendary is set. We want to check what and we want to check that is set to the value that we send. So the row column is 1 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. So column number 12 is what legendary is, and if it's set to the value that, if it's set and isn't set to the value that we set, it will just skip. So if we save it here, get the URL again, copy this, and just do legendary equals true. It should, in theory, only bring back legendaries which are true. So, like I said, this is not a full-fledged API, but very easy way to get started. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and that's how you build a Pokemon API from Google Sheets in 30 minutes.